septic to sewer. Because they're receiving that benefit and because that's going to be an increase in their property values, then they should be paying their fair share. The entire city should not be subsidizing their improvements. So that's the basic concept of a local improvement district bond. And then there's refunding bonds, where you're refinancing bonds for interest cost savings. The last category would be short-term notes, where a bond anticipation note is similar to a line of credit. A lot of times those are used with LIDs where you don't know your final costs, so you go out and you do interim financing. Once you know the final costs, then you issue the long-term debt.
Jim, on the local improvement district bonds,
Yes.
do those have to be secured by the utility?
No, you can also, the categories go, typically you'll find that LIDs are issued for street improvements, sidewalk improvements, utility improvements.
Okay.
Then you may choose to also have a backup pledge. Let's say you're going from septic to sewer, or you're doing street lighting. Well, let's just say septic to sewer. Then you may want to back that LID with the water and sewer systems to lower the revenues. So in that case, it's known as a utility local improvement district, where it's backed by assessments solely, but then in a secondary backup pledge, the water and sewer system is also supporting it. And that's very common. We did one for the city of Fife where they did a citywide sewer utility local improvement district.
You can go citywide with an LID.
You can, yes.
A district?
But everybody has to benefit by
Not
it.
limited to a city.
So a water reservoir
Well,
or
you
something
actually
like
can-
that could be an LID?
Yes.
Why would you do that instead of just a revenue bond?
It just depends on the circumstances, but I have to clarify, you can go outside your city boundaries. in
Yes,
LA.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not limited to the city.
What the city of Fife did is that pretty much it was a citywide sewer LID. City of Tacoma treats their waste, so they had 4 zones. So the further, if you were in zone 4, the furthest from City of Tacoma's treatment center, then you paid a higher assessment than if you were in zone 1.
Okay, so it gave them the ability to have a variable payment depending upon your proximity, as opposed to a revenue bond. It's a revenue bond.
Right,
Okay,
right.
gotcha.
They're also pretty interesting to use for, prior to the economy of 2008, to use with like developer LID projects. We worked on a couple different ones where they're like master plan communities for Snoqualmie, City of Guillaume, and others. But those are rather challenging in this economy because we have dropping real estate values. We have, unfortunately, we have developers that are going bankrupt. And so some of these projects are getting stalled for a number of years. So I would just caution you. And unfortunately, I have direct experience on a project I worked on last year that it went fine, but for 4 months we had to really babysit it because the property values dropped over 50%. In the middle of financing, the developer filed for bankruptcy, and then there were some lawsuits. And when you add all those factors together,
And it came out fine?
well, it was, we really couldn't sell bonds to the public with that many challenges. So what we did is we negotiated, found a local bank, and then educated the bank about the financing, and then brought United States Department of Agriculture in to put a guarantee on the local bank's loan. The interest rate on it was 8.25%, and but that's because of all the risk associated. And so it really was, in my 25 years of experience, I'd never seen anything like that. And I never want to see anything like that again, but yeah, it was a real unfortunate set of circumstances. So.
But you saved it with this thing that you put together.
Right, yeah, yeah. So if you're thinking about a local improvement district, while we're on it, let's just turn the page. And after that experience last year, I created this slide on page 14 and 15. But one of the biggest challenges, I would say, if we turn especially to page 15 on avoiding pitfalls, you want to bring in a special benefit consultant before you start down the road too far, and have that special benefit consultant look at the area, do a preliminary analysis, and make sure that there's actually, that the benefits will exceed the costs before you go too far down the road, because you can spend a lot of money on these projects, and then all of a sudden, the special benefit consultant comes in and says, you know, there's just not enough benefit there to cover the costs. So by law, the assessment costs cannot exceed the special benefit. And as an example, I've been working with the city of Leavenworth on a $20 million LID for new streets and sidewalks. And then they finally brought in the special benefit consultant, and that's when the rubber hit the road, and right now the project is delayed. They've received some grants from state TIB and Department of Transportation, but they need to wait and kind of regroup to see what they'll do. So the other issue is that if a developer approaches the city for an LID, that's the time to really sit down and negotiate hard with them. There's things like you can get them to give up their right for, typically if there's 2 to 3 years of delinquent payments, after that 2 to 3 year period, you can foreclose on the property and then basically sell the property and use that money to pay off the assessment debt related to the developer. But if you can get the developer right up front to waive that right, what we call an accelerated foreclosure agreement, where it says as soon as you miss one assessment, then we can begin foreclosure proceedings. We don't have to wait the statutory 3 years. Then that really puts a hammer to them, and they know right up front that the city's not going to tolerate any game playing or any delays like that. So it's an important point to consider. Even with City of Fife, they're big sewer ULID, and they had a home developer that was building all these homes, and there was a portion of the LID that was structured just for that developer, a special schedule. And right before their first assessment was due, they came in and they asked the city, now, we want to understand your 12% interest rate delinquency penalty. So they were seriously thinking about not paying. So the city said, well, they threatened to postpone all their permits unless they paid. So anyway, long story short, LIDs can be challenging in this economy. Page 3 just talks about the process. And again, what we do is we come in, find out about the project, look at all your options, present those options. Then we put together what we call a preliminary official statement that describes the city, your economy, the demographics, coach and prepare you for the bond rating presentation to Standard & Poor's. And then from there, you present to Standard & Poor's typically via conference call. About 10 days later, they issue the rating grade, the bonds are sold, and then money is wired to your bank account. You must spend bond proceeds within 36 months of the date that you receive funds. Bond proceeds can only be spent for capital improvement purposes. So equipment, property acquisition, water, sewer improvements, but you cannot use bond monies to cover operating costs. You see any questions so far? Page 4 talks about long-term capital improvement planning and prioritizing projects. And again, it's important to look at all your options, sort of do a forecast and say, okay, what are our current infrastructure needs? What are our replacement needs? Prioritize those projects.